the great hall of the Justice League, there are assembled the world's 4 greatest heroes, created from the cosmic legends of the universe. Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Aquaman, and those 3 junior super friends, Wendy, Marvin, and Wonder Dog.
How about that, Scott? Going way back to like the very first version of this show.
I feel like I should be sitting in my living room on Saturday morning with a big old bowl of Mr. T cereal.
What you talking about, man?
Hell yeah, man. Today we are talking about obscure cartoons from the 80s, the 90s. I don't know how far you went. Mine, I picked all around the 80s and the 90s, and I wanted to pick things that I was really hoping you would remember. So I'm really looking forward to this show.
You often talk about how our slight age difference, there's gaps, like with music and movies. I think it's really going to shine through here with cartoons.
Ooh, I can't wait. And I'll tell you, I had to start with Super Friends. So Super Friends for me, and this is just one of those really weird memories that I have, but waking up and having a routine every Saturday morning, and the earliest memory of that routine was starting with Super Friends. And I would be so excited for that music. And then, like, at some point, like, they would start to show reruns, and it was like, am I going to get those stupid twins? I hate those twins. Or am I going to get, like, who are you going to? Because they would start mixing it up. I even remember at one point, they brought in Adam West to be the voice of Batman. I was so into that show because that would kick off the rest of my morning. It was appointment TV for me on Saturday mornings.
When you brought to me we were going to do this topic, I started doing some research about obscure cartoons, but I had to start by listing down what my favorite cartoons were as a kid. You know, you started with Super Friends. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was my daily go-to. I remember watching that after school every day.
Yeah, I was into that one for sure.
I had all the toys, and this is not an obscure cartoon by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, that was hands down. I was right there with every other 80s boy in that demographic watching He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Even you bringing that up, I forget sometimes how big that was. That was just everywhere. And they ran that series, even the toys, well past like I was fully grown up by the time they pulled the plug on that series.
Yeah, I remember going over to the local department store, Boscov's, and they had He-Man there, and somebody was dressed up like He-Man and Tila. And I remember my mom took me and my friend down the street over, and I remember coming home with like 5 new toys that day. So it was just, I feel like the whole cartoon was just to sell toys, which looking at this list, most of the 80s things were so synergized with toy lines. It kind of disgusting looking at the marketability of this whole thing. But yeah, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was my hands down go-to. I remember having He-Man birthday parties. It was a whole big deal.
I remember I wanted Trapjaw, but I got Mech-a-Neck.
I had both of them. I had almost every toy. The only one I remember not having was Evelyn.
Did they ever make an Orko? I can't remember if they ever made an Orko figure.
Orko had one where you put the little, it was like a ribbed thing you put in. You zipped it out. It was like a ripcord, and you like spun around in circles on the table because he was always like a fucking spaz.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, like every McDonald's toy, they'd have a version of you pull the cord and...
Their ripcord.
Yeah, we'll run right off the table. Oh, I can't wait to jump in and talk about all of these. But before we get started, everybody, I have to remind you, please like and subscribe.
So pretty please, with sugar on top.
We're over there on the YouTube. We're on every podcast platform out there, as far as I know. If there's one that we're not on, please write us and let us know, because pretty damn sure we're on everything, including Audible. I didn't even put us on Audible, but somehow we're on Audible. I was like, oh, cool. We're on Audible.
I think Buzzsprout hooked us up, or Audible's one that they throw us out there on. So way to go with the production.
Yeah. So everybody, please let your friends know, and let's keep on growing this thing, because it's a lot of fun. And that takes us right into fuck-upperies. Do we have any fuck-upperies? I don't think we've made many mistakes lately. I think we've been on a really good roll.
I have one. I wish I could say I was clean. We were talking about good old Willem Dafoe and what a good guy he is. I gave him credit for Full Metal Jacket. He wasn't in Full Metal Jacket. He was in Platoon.
put your mouth on this.
Oh.
So,
Well, that's an easy one to mix up, though.
yeah, they both came out, I think, around the same time. I remember them from the same time anyway. But in my head, I could picture him. I know what movie I was talking about, but he was not Lieutenant Pyle. He was definitely in Platoon, out in the jungles with Charlie Sheen in Platoon.
Well, I didn't hear it. I mean, it went right by me, so I didn't catch it. But I remember seeing Full Metal Jacket, but I don't think I remember being okay by it. Like I didn't pay a lot of attention. I was really kind of fucked up by it.
Yeah.
So Platoon, when that came out and everybody was going to see Platoon, I was like, nope. I don't need to see any more of these war movies. I think it's only been Full Metal Jacket and Red Dawn. I'm pretty sure are the only war movies I've ever seen.
You've never seen Saving Private Ryan or anything more recent?
Never.
Really?
Mm-mm. Yeah, I just don't like it. It's too. Yeah, how many times have I said it? Like I go to these movies and shit to watch fantasy shit that doesn't, isn't real.
Yeah.
And that's just me. But that meant I can't go to see a lot of these dramas because they just hit home and I'm too sensitive of a guy or whatever. But these going to see these war movies, I don't like them. I feel uneasy. And I don't want to go pay money to feel uneasy. That's not a good use of my funds.
What about like Hot Shots Part 2 or a comedy take on war?
Oh, I could do that all day long. Hot Shots Part 2.
Or even just regular Hot Shots was so funny with Lloyd Bridges. That was so good.
Oh, man. Part 2 when he comes out in the Rambo buffed up. Was he buff? Wait, actually, I think I'm confusing him and Weird Al. Weird Al.
You're thinking about UHF.
Yeah, Weird Al wore the suit.
Yeah.
So when Charlie Sheen came out, he was actually buff. He wasn't wearing a suit. He actually buffed up for that Part 2.
Yeah, he was pretty jacked. He did have like the red bandana on. He ran out of ammo, so he grabbed like a chicken and shot a chicken with a bow and arrow through a guy's chest.
Yeah.
So you can remember, you can appreciate the comedy stylings of war, but not the war aspect of it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
War is hell.
War, that's what they say. What about like Top Gun? Top Gun was like a war movie.
Top Gun's a weird movie because I don't think they ever say who the bad guy is, right? You just kind of go in, you shoot down a bad guy, and then the credits roll. If there's any kind of war going on, you don't really know what's going on. Am I wrong?
Top Gun was more about the training because Top Gun was the school that they went to train for war. So it wasn't until the new Top Gun Maverick where they actually, I think, went to war, if my memory serves.
And who was the villain in Top Gun Maverick? Who was in those other planes? I don't even know if they said.
No, never did. The bad guy.
The bad guy. But was it the Ruskies?
I don't know. They're not saying. Like I said last show, they want that box office money from those foreign countries. They're not here to offend.
Would it be great? Do you think like you make it, you say the Russians are the bad guys, but then the Russians get a version of the movie and it says like, the people in London are the enemy.
Yeah. It's draw your own outcome. China thinks it's Russia. Russia thinks it's Iran. Iran thinks it's Christ, who knows what.
Yeah. Just keep everybody guessing just to make that money.
You know it.
Well, I don't think that's that bad a fuck-uppery.
Okay, good. Good.
We got some mail.
Mail, motherfucker.
All right. It's been a while.
We got some mail again from our buddy Bill Blade. So a couple episodes ago, we were talking about Liquid TV, and I was kind of going, Liquid TV? That sounds familiar. Why do I remember Liquid TV? Well, he wrote back. He goes, Ion Flux.
Oh, right.
Ion Flux came from Liquid. Right. Now it all started to click.
I remember that.
That's what Liquid TV was. It was that variety show. Is it Ion Flux or Eon Flux?
I call it Eon Flux.
And I remember when that came out, I was like, this is really cool animation.
Yeah.
I got to think about it a bit. Was that anime? It kind of looked like Todd McFarlane style art.
I just remember there being like a fly stuck in eyelashes was like a thing that stands out very vividly to me from that show. I probably couldn't tell you much more about it than that.
I liked it. They made a movie.
Oh, what's her name?
What's her name?
Charlize Theron was in the live action Aeon Flux.
Yeah, I don't think that did very well, but I remember when it came out, I was like, oh, this could be cool. And didn't go to see it.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back and see if there's any Liquid TV episodes. Like I'd enjoy the hell out of going back and watching some of the first run, like Beavis and Butthead when they appeared on that.
Yeah.
And they were drawn so differently. I'd love looking at the history of the way that, especially in animation, the way that you kind of can tell through the years as it's changed its art style or improved from like Simpsons to like Family Guy. I love watching old
South
ones.
Park.
South Park. Oh, it's so much fun to go
Yeah.
back and go, oh, I forgot how shitty this looked.
Do you remember in the very first few episodes of Beavis and Butthead, they had like the old neighbor guy was basically Hank Hill from King of the Hill?
Kinda, yeah. Well, those episodes, like there was one where they were trying to lick a frog to get high. I kind of remember that.
Yeah. He was like, "You aren't the guys that shave my dog's butt, are you?"
Oh, good impression. I sell propane and propane accessories.
Ooh, bad impression.
Awful impression. Well, thanks for that email, Bill. How about we get into the main segment here, Scott? I feel like we have a lot of stuff to talk about, so I want to jump into it a little bit quicker than usual.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm still kind of excited about us talking about He-Man, so I'm like, let's go right back to He-Man.
And the masters of the universe.
So how into He-Man were you?
He-Man was big. He-Man was really big. And I'm trying to remember, because honestly, as I was writing all this down, as I was preparing for this show, I forgot He-Man until you said it. And now I'm going to sit here and tell you He-Man was big, and then I go, well, I forgot it all. I think what I was trying to remember as I was writing this list down was Saturday morning cartoons, but completely forgetting, well, not completely forgetting now that I'm looking at my list, but after school cartoons were a big deal. And that's when He-Man was on. So I missed a few of the after school guys now that I'm thinking about it. So I'm going to have to make up for it and say them as we get to them and pretend they were on my list.
Well, I think that's how my list went. Like I said, I started thinking about obscure things. A lot of the things on my list aren't that obscure. They're things that you probably watched and completely forgot about. And I think as I go through some of my things, it's going to happen a lot. I'll mention something. You're like, oh, yeah, I watched that. But you didn't think about it. And you probably didn't think about even putting it on your list.
That's what I'm hoping. I can't wait to hear what you got.
So you got about 5 years on me. Were you, when you say He-Man was big, were you into the toys? Were you into that whole scene? I remember every toy came with a little comic book, and I remember reading all the comics.
Yeah. So the cartoon, I don't believe came out yet. I think the toys in that comic came out, because I remember really being into that comic. And, you know, Skeletor had a sword and He-Man had a sword. And I don't know if you remember this, but you could put the swords together.
Oh.
And they were supposed to create like this greater sword. But I don't think the cartoon ever really talked about that. The comic, if I'm remembering, did talk about that. So it kind of launched, the toy launched, and then a cartoon came out, and it sort of upset the original story. So then you now have this new He-Man story, which is just the cartoon.
Yeah, he had like the Sword of Grayskull was the whole thing that transformed Prince Adam into He-Man.
Yeah, I had a lot of those toys, man. I had the Grayskull. I had the Skeletors.
I had Grayskull. I had Snake Mountain.
That what it was called? Snake Mountain? Yeah, I had that. With a dumb little glove, like a monster glove that you could put on and slide your hand through. And do you remember that?
I do, but that was part of the Evil Horde's lair. That was much later. That was...
Oh.
So Snake Mountain had a microphone you could talk into. It looked like a bat head. And you could like, it was like a voice changer. And that's what Snake Mountain had.
So the thing I'm thinking of was different? Didn't have that snake puppet either?
Yeah, the thing you're thinking of was like a little cave-looking thing that the Evil Horde, that was their base. They were like another bad guy that came along later on.
Right, that skull-looking, different-looking Horde guy.
Yep.
And he was kind of like the new Skeletor. I forgot all about him.
Yeah.
For a hot minute, they were trying to make like a second big baddie. And he came with a whole bunch of kits and things like that.
He had the leech. I remember the leech toy would like stick to a window. If you held his mouth up to it and pushed the button on his back, he would like hold fast with his mouth. There were like rock creatures that came out a little bit after that. I was punching out by the time the rock creatures came out, but the cartoon had all these things in it. And then from the cartoon, we got She-Ra, who was like He-Man for the girls.
Would you watch that?
I watched an episode or two, but not like I was with He-Man. Oh, I mean, the boys at school find out you're watching She-Ra, you're going to catch some shit for that. You are a shemp.
You shemp. You're watching She-Ra. Yeah, I could never watch that. Gem and the Holograms, like anything that was meant for girls back then. You know, we were boys told never watch girl stuff. You're weird if you watch anything. So I was following that rule, following the rule society gave me. So there was all sorts of shows that I can't say I watched, like Pound Puppies, Munchie Cheese.
Munchie.
You know, like these, they just weren't made for me.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot that I missed just because I was a boy watching stuff made for boys.
Right on. So you mentioned with the Justice League or the league, what was it? Justice League and Friends, or what was that called? The official title?
It's called the Super Friends.
Super Friends.
Super Friends.
Of course. That was your favorite? That was your go-to?
It was for a while. I remember getting really into Godzilla. So it would be Super Friends and Godzilla would be on right around the same time. And I was a huge Godzilla fan as a kid. Is that something that ever got on your radar?
I don't remember there being a Godzilla cartoon, no.
Up from the depths, 30 stories high, breathing fire, his head in the sky. Godzilla, and Godzuki.
Yeah, there was a Godzilla cartoon, and there was a little, you know, there always has to be like a little creature in every one of these cartoons to like be the comic relief. Well, Godzuki.
Godzuki?
Godzilla's kid was the. Did you know Godzilla had a kid named Godzuki?
No.
The Further Adventures of Godzilla and Godzuki. Whatever the real cartoon show was called, it was just their adventures.
Wow.
And I remember it being like Godzuki and a group of people are kind of having an adventure, and then all of a sudden they need Godzilla, and they do something to signal Godzilla, and he comes up and he saves the day, and that's every episode.
So was he still fighting like Mechagodzilla and Mothra and, you know, the other creatures, or no?
I just can't remember. That's a great question.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if they had the license for all of that.
All right.
So yeah, it would go from Super Friends to Godzilla, and then Snorks. And I remember going,
Snorks made my list. Yeah.
oh, I hated the Snorks. I was like, God, now I got to wait for the Snorks and the Smurfs and all that dumb shit to end so that I can get back to the boy cartoons.
Yeah, and the Snorks were basically just the Smurfs underwater.
So I took some notes on some of these. The Snorks had 65 episodes, ran from 1984 to 1989. It's a big show.
Yeah, it was.
I hated the Snorks. I hated whatever was on their head. Made no sense. I just knew it was a Smurfs ripoff, and I was already kind of sick of the Smurfs. Do you remember how many Smurf toys there were?
I do.
In the 80s?
I do.
Oh, God, everybody had one of those, like, there was like 10,000 of those little Smurf figurines, and everybody had them.
And I'm pretty sure that the Snorks were made by the exact same people that made the Smurfs. So it was like a ripoff, but they were just trying to cash back in because they were running out of shit for Smurfs to do.
If only these Smurfs could swim. How about we start a new series about swimming Smurfs?
Back to the drawing board. Take off their stupid hat and give them a snorkel. You're a genius. Back up the Brinks truck.
Sometimes I watch there's a show called the Movies That Made Us, the Shows That Made Us, something like that. The Games That Made Us, the Toys That Made Us.
The Toys That Made Us is a big
whatever.
one.
Yeah. And they're fun to watch because they're giving you like the behind the scenes of, you know, we did this for this reason. And it's always a bunch of people that aren't very creative. You know what I mean? So when you say like it was probably somebody with zero creativity in their body saying, hey, Smurfs are working real good. Let's try the Smurfs underwater. Like that sounds like something a non-creative executive at whatever, you know, network would come up with.
I feel like many of these things came out from the Deke company. DIC.
I loved it. They'd be like, Deke. And I'm like, you're a dick. Stop it. You're a dick.
I thought it was so funny. I used to do the same thing. I was like, Dick. I remember getting yelled at for that a couple times.
Dick.
But then you hear, Deke. I remember being young enough to go, they're trying to church up Dick. I know this is Dick. DIC spells dick.
Throw me one of yours. What do you got from memory lane?
All right. So in my head, doing that, watching Super Friends, and then going through that pattern, we would start to get around 10 a.m. 10 a.m. is when the cartoons started to get a little bit more interesting for me. They were a little bit more boy targeted and more modern. So I remember at about this time, there was Dungeons and Dragons. Did you watch the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon?
Hey, look! A Dungeons and Dragons ride!
No, but in doing some research on here, I saw Dungeons and Dragons as a cartoon on there. I don't have any memory of watching that.
Whatever this new movie coming out is about, the commercials look like it is a adaptation of the cartoon.
Okay.
if that tells you anything.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I love the cartoon. I enjoyed the hell out of that cartoon. So now that they're making this movie, I'm like, God, I hope it's as fun as the cartoon. I'm kind of rooting for it because I have nostalgia for the old cartoon.
Gotcha. How about, and this is one that I think we might vary on here because I may have been too old at the time to be watching this, but my love for the original subject matter had me watching it, and really maybe one of my favorites, Muppet Babies.
I hated Muppet Babies. See, that was one of those. Yeah, it was for girls. I wasn't allowed to watch that.
Yeah.
By the laws of society, little boys were not allowed to watch Muppet Babies.
Do you know what drew me into it? When they would always do cutaways to live action movies, they would like open the closet door and Darth Vader would be there. Like they would like bring in Star Wars characters and real life people. And it was always like a gag. Like they'd open the door, there'd be like a TIE fighter flying at them shooting lasers, and they'd freak out and slam the closet door closed. It was always in their imagination, but I always thought it was funny how they would bring in like popular movies and things of the time just in their closet gag.
I kind of remember a Muppet movie too where there were Muppet Babies. Like they made Muppet Baby puppets. So now I'm wondering if the Muppet Baby cartoon came from that scene in that random Muppet movie from the 80s.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Never thought of that.
I don't know. But yeah, I had that down as one of my number twos. And I don't know that was an after school one. I don't know when that aired. I remember watching it on Nickelodeon after school, but it may have been in syndication at that point.
Yeah, that one I think I think that one was probably after school and Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Now that you say it, because that damn thing was always on. I was like, how do I get away from Muppet Babies?
I mean, of course, put out by Jim Henson Productions and harkening back to the 1970s variety show, The Muppet Show. It kind of drew from some of the same characters, of course, but also some of the same humor and the same writers, I think. They actually rebooted it a few years back on Disney Plus. Not as good, but they brought back the Muppet Babies here recently.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I only know it because of my kids. I'm not watching Muppet Babies anymore.
Blame your kids.
You can't prove it. You can't prove it.
Yeah, see, my kid's out of the house, so I can't use that as an excuse anymore. I was watching Inspector Gadget the other day with my kid. Come on.
I did like Inspector Gadget. Fucking idiot.
Let's go into some obscure ones. I'm going to throw a few out at you. Let me throw about 4 out at you that I don't think you're going to have heard of. Have you heard of the Popples?
I remember the Popples.
Do you?
They were little stuffed bears that they could like fold into a ball. They bounced around. I remember the toys. I remember the cartoon as well. I couldn't give you like a synopsis of an episode or anything, but I remember the gist of what they did and who they were.
I like the Popples. I don't know why. I thought it was so neat. So they were a dumb toy that you could take. It was a stuffed toy. It was a stuffed animal. And you would kind of fold it inside, like within itself, and it became a ball. And it was just you squishing the thing, kind of inside of itself. That was it. And they made a cartoon around it.
Did the toy come out first or did the show come out first?
I think that was a toy first, and then, people liked it, and then they were like, let's make a cartoon.
Yep.
But who knows? Back then, you're right. You were saying earlier about how some of these were really meant to, these cartoons were meant to be vehicles to sell toys. He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers.
Ninja Turtles?
Those for sure. Yeah, those for sure were made to sell toys.
For sure. All right, give me another obscure one.
In 1986, there were 13 episodes of this show called My Pet Monster.
I had a My Pet Monster.
Did you?
I did.
Why were they so big?
I don't know. I remember he came with like chains on his wrist. He had like a big green pickle looking nose. I don't know. And that was when the toy came first, I'm sure.
I remember the cartoon. The kid who owned My Pet Monster would put the handcuffs on his wrist and he would turn into a stuffed animal. And if he took the handcuffs off, he would then be the monster.
Oh, really?
If memory serves, that's what I think happened.
I had no idea that was part of because he came in a box that looked like a cage. Like he had to cage the beast. I had no idea it fed into the storyline of the cartoon.
Yeah. Did you get the BDSM My Pet Monster.
With the handcuffs and chains.
Whips and chains.
Yeah, we had a safety word.
It was Popple. How about the Rubik's Cube cartoon?
Really?
Yes, good. I finally stumped you. There was a Rubik's Cube cartoon. This little fucking Rubik's Cube would run around, and he was little, and he could fly, and all of a sudden this little purple face would pop onto the Rubik's Cube, and it would have this like really annoying little voice, that you'd expect from a little creature that flies around. And they get all into crazy hijinks. Yeah, there was a Rubik's Cube fucking show.
My name is Rubik.
Did he have arms and legs, or I can't picture what this would look like?
I'm pretty sure he had legs. I gotta look it up. Rubik's Cube. Yeah, I found it. Here it is. So it's called Rubik the Amazing Cube. 1983 half-hour Saturday morning animated series based on the puzzle Ruby Spears Enterprises produced. It was on ABC.
You said just one season, though, 1986. 13 episodes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the picture. There's a little boy, a little girl on a bicycle. There's a dog, and their buddy is the Rubik Cube. And he just basically, it's a little, I said purple, but he looks blue. And it's just a head on the front and two little feet underneath. And he flies around like he's a Halley's Comet. He's got this little halo kind of thing following, or whatever you call those tails, whatever you call it.
Wow.
Yeah. They tried that.
Like, how much could he get into? That's so insane to me. I have no memory of this at all.
Oh, he can get into a lot of trouble. If you turn his colors the wrong way, he becomes a murderer. And then this last one I have, because I wanted to hit you with 4 that you didn't know. You knew most of these. What about shirt tails?
I had a sleeping bag of the shirt tails. They were 4 animals, 4 different. I remember there being a tiger, a raccoon, a cat maybe, and a monkey. And they all wore T-shirts that had little tags that hung out the back to the shirt tails. I remember that they lived in a tree house, but that's all I remember.
I remember the monkey's name was Bogey. And they were Tom, like Humphrey Bogart. Like, we kids knew who the fuck that was.
Now that you say that, I do recall that, yeah.
Who do you call when the going gets tough?
Who do you need?
How about it? I'm impressed. All right, I'm going to keep on going. Do you remember there being a show where Pebbles and Bam Bam are grown up?
Yes.
Do you remember there was some kind of like power hour where they would have Pebbles and Bam Bam, but they would also have the Thing from Fantastic Four?
No, I don't remember that.
This is a weird one. I don't even know how many of these episodes they made, but they gave the Thing a totally different power. So it was basically a guy, and he had rings on each finger, on each hand rather, and he would bash the rings together and say, "Bing ring, do your thing," and then he would turn into the Thing.
Really?
Ding ring, do your thing.
May I have dispense?
And as a comic book fan, I was like, this pisses me off. This is so stupid. And it was bundled with, if I'm right, Bam Bam and fucking Pebbles. And there was a third thing too, a Shmoo. Do you know what Shmoo is?
I don't recall Shmoo, no.
Shmoo was just this like white blob. He used to be with the Herculoids, but he was part of this too, because it was all wrapped into Hanna-Barbera.
Yes.
Hanna-Barbera owned the license to all these characters for this cartoon.
I do remember the blob. I don't remember him being called Shmoo. There were 2 of them, weren't there?
An older one and a younger one, I think. Yeah. One was bigger, one was smaller.
Right. You know what always pissed me off about the animation of the Pebbles and Bam Bam show?
What?
I didn't like that Bam Bam had like completely white hair and wore a turtle shell as a helmet. I thought his animation was so stupid. But then I looked back at the original Bam Bam from like the 1960s Flintstones, and he did have white hair. So I guess they had to keep with that. But I always thought his animation was just stupid.
How did he get so strong?
I don't know. We don't know. We don't even know who his parents were. He was the first adopted baby on television.
Is that true?
He was not truly a Rubble. Yeah. Betty and Barney adopted Bam Bam.
Which episode did they say that?
this was part of the original Flintstones.
Amazing. Yeah, I never knew that. Interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, I'm going to name a couple shows here that you're going to know as live action shows. You have to tell me which ones were also Saturday morning cartoons.
All right.
All right. Happy Days. Was it a cartoon? Was it not a cartoon?
See, my instinct is to say no, but then I also think, why would you say that unless it wasn't? I'm going to say yes.
They made a Happy Days cartoon. Yes, they did. Laverne and Shirley. Now, could they, would they make a Laverne and Shirley cartoon?
I remember there being Squiggy on Scooby-Doo. So I'm going to say yes.
There was a Laverne and Shirley cartoon.
Okay.
How about Mork and Mindy? You think they made a Mork and Mindy cartoon?
Sure. Why wouldn't they? It's all the same family. It's all the same universe, as we learned.
You got that one right too, brother. They made a Mork and Mindy cartoon. How about the movie Rambo? There's no way they made a cartoon of that, right?
They did. I remember this.
They did. And I remember there being controversy because that was an R-rated movie. And they're like, well, we can't make kids stuff out of an R-rated movie. Like, that's just not okay. So they made a cartoon and they watered it down.
Not to interrupt your quiz here, but they made a RoboCop cartoon.
That was next on my list.
Yeah, RoboCop made my list and it made me think of it when you said R-rated movie. Like, we joked last week about how RoboCop is just machine gun death after machine gun death. Or maybe that was 2 weeks ago. But they made an animated series of RoboCop in 1988. I think it was only 13 episodes, but they took like the most murderous live action movie and turned it into a kid's cartoon.
Well, this next one and my final one, this one is always just absolutely floored me. How? In what fucking world could this cartoon have been made? How was the Toxic Crusaders made? The Toxic Crusaders was based on the Toxic Avenger, one of the most offensive movies ever. And somehow they found a way to make a kid's cartoon out of it.
I knew about Toxic Avenger mainly because of Toxic Crusader. And it wasn't until I was older that I watched Chroma.
That's funny. Yeah, so you learned in reverse.
Yeah, which is probably the whole idea of the cartoon, was to draw kids in with a character and then have them look out for it later on in life.
I do kind of remember the cartoon. It came out after I was done watching cartoons. I wrote down here 1991. So I was in 10th grade, so I should have been done watching cartoons. But I think I do remember when it came out, they had to give it some kind of, because all those cartoons had to have some kind of value to children. Whether, it was one to grow on or
knowing is half the battle.
Knowing, yeah. There always had to be something for some reason. Maybe that's what the FCC said. Maybe that's what networks said. But there always had to be some kind of value with these cartoons. So if I'm remembering right, their value was they were bringing the concept of pollution and nuclear waste and all these awful things that are in the world. And like basically they were talking about trying to clean all that up and, not exactly Captain Planet, but kind of Captain Planet-y. I wonder, I think
Toxie was the original Captain Planet.
Yeah. If I'm wrong, shoot me, forgive me. But pretty sure that was the agenda of that cartoon.
That's how I remember it.
You ever watch Richie Rich?
I did. Remember his dog was named Dollar, and when he would run fast, his dollars, like the dog had dollar signs on his back, like in his fur. And when he would run fast, the dollar signs would stay behind.
Damn, man, you have a good memory.
Yeah. Let me give you some here. How about Danger Mouse? Do you remember Danger Mouse?
I do. I have Danger Mouse on my list. I didn't think anybody watched Danger Mouse but me.
For my daughter's 3rd birthday, all she wanted was a Danger Mouse t-shirt. Do you think I could find a Danger Mouse t-shirt?
No.
We went online and bought like a Danger Mouse patch, like just the DM, and we sewed it onto a shirt, and she was happy as could be. They did remake it. They re-released some episodes in 2015, but yeah, Danger Mouse went from 1981 through 1992. So it was like 11 years, Danger Mouse. And it was bigger in England or in Britain. And then Danger Mouse had a spin-off. Do you know the spin-off?
Was it Count Duckula?
It was Count Duckula.
He had a spinoff. I just remember the character.
Count Duckula had his own cartoon, yeah.
Yeah, because it was Danger Mouse was kind of like 007.
Yeah.
Which was big in the 80s, but I still was like, it's out of my, realm of knowledge. So I didn't totally get that they were goofing on 007 or parodying it in any way.
Right.
I don't know what I liked about it. I just thought it was cool. Because Mighty Mouse had a big comeback in the 80s too. And I remember watching Mighty Mouse and Danger Mouse and being like, it's crazy. There's a Danger Mouse and a Mighty Mouse. How could this be? And I remember really liking that Danger Mouse. And isn't there a musician now called...
Yeah, there's a DJ, but he spells it Danger M-A-U. I think he uses a 5 instead of an S. But yeah, Danger Mouse is a DJ. But you had to get his name from this, right?
I mean, how else?
Where else are you getting that? There's only one Danger Mouse.
Danger Mouse was on USA Network, which had Shirt Tail. So I tried to stay the fuck off the USA Network because it had all the cartoons I didn't like, but my sister liked. But eventually I got into Danger Mouse. So she wore me down, I guess.
I remember it was produced by Thames Entertainment, like the Thames River. And it was always at the end of the show. And I was like, oh, this is a big British thing. Like, I didn't even know what that meant, but I remember they showed like Big Ben being reflected in the Thames. I was like, oh, yeah.
If I'm not wrong, they had that same title card or end title card on Benny Hill as well. I'm not sure that's right. But
you might be.
Thames.
How about Mr. T? Did you watch Mr. T? That was a Saturday morning cartoon.
I did. I got that one on my list too. Took a few notes on that because it was a big one for me. I should have mentioned it up front. 1983 to 1985, 30 episodes for season 1. But by the time they got to season 3, they had 6 episodes. The damn show jumped the shark so fast and just ran out of gas. But I liked it.
So here's the story in a nutshell. Mr. T was the coach of a kids gymnastics team, and they would travel around solving mysteries, very much like Scooby-Doo. But Mr. T was like their coach, and the kids would use their gymnastic abilities to vault and pommel and do all that shit to solve crimes.
What?
Yes.
None of this rings a bell. We watched different shows.
This was the show. This was it. Because if you remember, the kids always wore like red sweatsuits, and they would have like gymnastics uniforms on under the sweatsuits.
Wow, I really don't remember this. I just remember them being out and running around like every other cartoon. I don't remember it being gymnastics based.
That was the whole backstory. And then I joked about, the opening song for Super Friends made me think I should be eating my Mr. T cereal. Mr. T was a real big deal.
It was a huge deal. That's why I'm surprised I don't remember this as well as I thought I did. Oh, he was everywhere, man. Mr. T was big. He's still alive.
Yeah.
You suckers drugged me, didn't you?
Where do you think he is right now?
Somewhere pitying the fool.
Think he ever got on an airplane by himself?
Do you think the real Mr. T was afraid of flying or just B.A. Baracus?
I think that was the real Mr. T. I think everything you see on TV is reflects real life, right?
Maybe. I don't know what his acting chops were. Maybe that was just, he always played himself, kind of.
I do love that Mr. T cereal. That was a big one. I had a lot of Mr. T cereal. Maybe that's why I thought Mr. T was a big deal. Because the cereal was always around.
I remember it just being like a T-shaped Captain Crunch, right?
Yeah. I think that's all it was.
How about Denver the Last Dinosaur?
No, never heard of that. Denver the Last Dinosaur.
Denver the Last Dinosaur was almost like Encino Man with Brendan Fraser, where these kids find a dinosaur in modern times and they thaw him out and they kind of show him around and they teach him how to be cool. But it was like very late 80s, early 90s cool. Like he can ride a skateboard and he can wear a pair of funky sunglasses. But he also had like a piece of the shell from his egg, and they could time travel back to prehistoric times. He'd take the kids with them. And this came out in 1988. And I think it only lasted one season, but it was probably about 25 episodes, I believe.
Yeah, this one I don't know at all.
This was also produced by Dick.
Dick. Try to church it up, Deke. You know you're Dick.
Here's one that I almost guessed when you were playing me the GoBots theme during our Guess That theme song. You remember a show called Mask?
Oh, yes. That's on my list. It was going to be one of my big ones at the end. You liked it too, huh?
I watched it. I remember I had So Mask was just made to sell toys. In fact, I think the toys came out first, if I'm not mistaken. And in fact, I know I'm not mistaken because Kenner Company, who made the toys, was the producer of the television show. Masks was an acronym for something. But the whole kick was all the heroes would put on a mask and it would give them special powers. And they would almost like transform. I remember they fought the bad guys.
Well, their vehicles would transform. They didn't do anything.
Right.
They just had the mask on, right? I don't remember them doing anything.
I almost feel like they got special powers or they could only hop in their vehicle with their mask on. The mask did something. They always wore masks. I remember they fought the bad guys whose name was Venom. And that was an acronym for something else. And I can't remember what it was. But I remember the toy I had, it was like a base. And out in front of the base, they had gas pumps. And the gas pumps would transform into like lasers.
Yes. You got a great memory. I loved the Trans Am and the 57 Chevy. Those two, I had so many adventures with those two vehicles. And the Trans Am, when you press a button and the spoiler, like back in the back end, would just change into like thrusters. And this was like a Trans Am that had like Lamborghini doors, you know?
I didn't have the Trans Am, but now that you describe this, my cousin had the Trans Am. I remember I had like a big rig. Like one of the guys was like a big, like muscular guy. He drove like an 18-wheeler and that transformed into something. I can't remember all the transforming.
There was another cartoon that was out at about this time because it was G.I. Joe was getting big. All these teams of like heroes were starting to pop out. And there was this one that I think came out that, oh, damn it, Scott, help me with the name of it. But I remember the action figures had these holes all over them and you could take these weapons and kind of tack them on.
I have it right here. It was called Centurions and I had the toys.
Centurion.
I remember
that was a good cartoon.
The guy I had was the flying guy because there was a guy from the sky. He was blue. There was a guy that went underwater. He was green. And there was a guy that was like on the land and he was brown, like orange. I remember the sky guy's name was Ace something. And I remember I had him and my brother had the other two. Yeah, Centurions made my list. Came out for one season in 1986. Actually created in part by Jack Kirby, who is, of course, a creator of many Marvel superheroes we know today. So it should have been a huge deal. It had everything behind it. There was the cartoon. There was a comic book that came out at the time. And it just never became greater than the sum of its parts.
Do you remember another toy around that time? I don't know if they had a cartoon, but there was like a mirror on their chest. And if you looked at it in certain angles, it could give you different symbols. And I remember they were kind of...
Don't recall that. No.
Yeah, there was just a minute where it was like Mask was huge, but for like a month. And then Centurions were huge, but for a month. Like all these things just started to happen. Brave Star, like a cartoon, hot for a minute. Like after a while, it was like they were just cranking content out and toys out just too fast. And I think they saturated the market. Because after that, what happened to cartoons? Like you hardly ever saw them after that. They were really drying up.
So Mask was almost like a combination of G.I. Joe and Transformers because you had the human element of these soldiers from Mask fighting the bad guys of Venom, which was like Cobra. I mean, it's complete blatant ripoff. But then like their cars would transform, much like Transformers did. So yeah, Mask was a big one. And then you brought up Centurions, which was my last one here for my obscure.
Yeah, it was fun just remembering that. I wish I could remember the one with the reflectors on their chest. I'll have to think about that one. I still have a few more on my list. I got Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. How could we have not talked about that yet?
Yeah.
That was a big one. In fact, I should put that on the list. I don't think I ever missed Godzilla, Super Friends, and Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Like those were must-sees. And Dungeons and Dragons.
His Amazing Friends, Iceman and Firestar.
Did you know they made a Ed Grimley? Is it Grimley? What's the? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Grimley was that was Martin Short, right?
Martin Short had a character, Ed Grimley. They made a cartoon.
I remember that. They made a Pee-wee's Playhouse cartoon.
They made a Bill and Ted cartoon.
I remember Bill and Ted. There was something that came out, speaking of cartoons ripping off one another. Remember Street Sharks?
Kind of. Yeah, but I was getting out of it. Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were getting like huge, so everybody was trying to do their own version of cool animals who do, So by that point, I punched out.
And that was just a complete ripoff of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like you said.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I said some of my other favorites here. I had G.I. Joe written down, which we've mentioned, and Transformers, of course, which we've mentioned. The Real Ghostbusters, I mentioned that on the previous show. That was the big one that I watched.
Oh, how could I forget that? What about the other Ghostbusters?
The Ghostbusters with the gorilla?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ghostbusters is almost not called Ghostbusters because that other show had the copyright of the name Ghostbusters.
Let's go,
You remember what they were going to call it?
Like Ghost Smashers or something?
Something like that. Yeah. Dan Aykroyd wanted to call it something different because they didn't have the rights. But they eventually got the rights. But something happened with those rights. I guess there was like an old Ghostbusters live action show at some point, I think.
Yes. And it was like a comedian, and it was a team of three. It was this comedian guy who I can't recall, a sidekick, and then they had this guy in the gorilla suit, and they were called the Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And they really didn't go around catching ghosts or anything. I don't know. I remember one year I got a VHS tape of the Ghostbusters, and it was the wrong Ghostbusters because, grandparents don't always know.
Well, I'm pretty sure that was Dick who put that out, they completely knew what they were doing. They knew if they put this out, they could interfere with people who knew of the Ghostbusters phenomenon that was happening, but they'd be confused and they'd buy the wrong thing or watch the wrong thing. It totally seems like a manipulative move.
No. I mean, they had the Ghostbusters name. So Dan Aykroyd always wanted to call it Ghostbusters. When he sold the movie idea to Universal realized they were the ones that told him that, no, you can't have Ghostbusters. It's already used. So for the beginning, when they first started shooting the movie, they were still trying to negotiate to get the Ghostbusters name. They shot several scenes. In fact, they shot pictures of the fire station where you just visited recently on a trip. And they had one with a sign that said Ghostbusters. And they took it down, put up like Ghost Chasers or Ghost Smashers, whatever it was. And they reshot the same scene with a different signage because even into production, they didn't know if they were going to get the name or not. Then when Ecto-1 pulls up to, the end building when they go up to fight Gozer, and all the New York citizens are chanting, Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters. One of the producers on set held up their phone. It wasn't their phone because it wasn't a cell phone. They held up a pay phone and they said, we're not going to be able to reshoot this, so you better get that name. And then they worked out an agreement. And the agreement was, you can have the name for this live action movie, but you can never make a cartoon. And then they come out with the Real Ghostbusters, which is like a complete dick slap in the face.
Deek slap.
Deek slap in the face. And the Real Ghostbusters was a great cartoon following up to that movie.
That was a good cartoon. That was a trippy cartoon. Well-written cartoon, too. Damn it. Can't believe I forgot that.
Hey, paisanos, it's the Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
Super Mario Brothers, Captain Lou Albano, that was an after school. But every Friday, it wasn't Super Mario Brothers. It was The Legend of Zelda.
Kind of remember that.
And The Legend of Zelda only ran for 13 episodes in 1986. I remember Link was like the most annoying shit ever. To start off, he was like, excuse me, princess. But by the end, it was like, well, excuse me, princess. It became like his annoying ass catch line.
Well, excuse me, princess.
Oh, you can blame Steve Martin for that. He was into that kind
Yeah.
of. Well, everyone was laughing at Steve Martin back then, so they were probably like, "Let's make Link like Steve Martin." Great idea.
Yeah, Link was not the jerk.
Yeah, I do remember that. What other video? There was Cubert. I remember. Now I'm remembering some other video game characters. There was Cubert.
Do you remember the Game Master?
Welcome to Videoland.
Wake up, Kid Icarus.
Welcome to Castlevania.
It's Congo Land.
I believe it was called the Game Master. It was just a guy, and he went into the video game world where he would fight. The bad guys were Mother Brain from Metroid, King Donkey from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Wasn't his name King Donkey?
Oh, but I know who you mean. Was it King Donkey? Wait, it was Bald Bull?
No. There was Bald Bull, but I'm almost sure there was King Donkey.
Yeah, I can't remember King Donkey.
Donkey Kong was a bad guy.
I don't remember this at all.
Yeah, and then his team was Kid Icarus. This guy, I want to say his name was like Nestor or Ness or something, because it was like Nintendo Entertainment System.
Oh, cute.
And then Simon Belmont from Castlevania was on his team. And there was a girl, a princess. I can't remember who the princess was. But it was like the good guys versus the bad guys. And he would go into this video game world. And his weapon, the guy's weapon, he had the Nintendo Zapper.
Are you making this up?
I swear to God, no. I'm going to look it up right now. Captain N, the Game Master, it was called.
1989 animation, 2 seasons. Nope. Never saw this, heard of this. How was this not on my radar? Everything video games I was into it. So I'm surprised I don't know.
Captain N, the Game Master is a cartoon series and comic book series depicting two different versions of the same basic story, a war between good and evil in the universe of Videoland. It was King Hippo. It was King Hippo, not King Donkey. That was my
King Hippo. There, that I remember. Right. I remember that fucker.
I had to punch him in the gut. It starred Mega Man, Kid Icarus, King Hippo, Eggplant Wizard. I don't remember who Eggplant Wizard would have been. Donkey Kong. I remember the main villain was Mother Brain from Metroid.
Yeah, I missed all of this. But you did prompt me to go look on Google to validate you're telling the truth. And sure enough, you're telling the truth.
Guess who produced it?
Who?
Deke. Fucking Strikes Again. Came out on NBC. It ran from 1989 to 1992.
Huh. So I'm going to go through a list of animated series based on video games courtesy of Wikipedia, which is the page I found trying to find this. Pac-Man. I do remember the Pac. Did we talk about Pac-Man yet?
No, but they just came out with New Pac-Man.
What, there's a new cartoon called New Pac-Man?
I don't know if it's called New Pac-Man, but it's new animation. It's all computer graphic animation.
I do remember Pac-Man because they gave him legs. I remember thinking that was weird. And then it says the Saturday Supercade, Donkey Kong, and Donkey Kong Jr., Pitfall, Frogger, Q*bert, Space Ace, and Kangaroo. I don't remember that show that had all those.
Me neither. That's almost like Atari days with all those.
Yeah. Dragon's Lair. I guess I remember a Dragon's Lair cartoon.
The video game itself was almost like a cartoon.
Basically was. Yeah, it was a Don Bluth animation.
Yeah.
Pole Position was a cartoon. Don't remember that. Super Mario Brothers Super Show. You just talked about that. Legend of Zelda. Captain N, the Game Master. The Adventures of Super Mario Brothers 3 came out in 1990. Then there was a cartoon called Super Mario World. Then we got Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, Double Dragon. They made a Mega Man cartoon. Where on the Earth is Carmen Sandiego? Darkstalkers, the animated series. I remember that game, but like, who else played that game but me? They thought that would make a good card. Earthworm Jim, Street Fighter, the animated series, Mortal Kombat, Defenders of the Realm. I don't know any of this. Now we're in the 1996. The Wing Commander Academy, Donkey Kong Country, Rayman. Yeah, I was out by then.
I punched out by then too.
A lot of games into cartoon shows I didn't remember.
Yeah, but Captain N was a pretty good mashup of really all the Nintendo launch games for the most part, and put them all together in this video land, I guess, as it said. And yeah, That never even popped up when I was doing my research for this show. I just remembered that off the top of my head.
I think you might be the only one who remembers it, you and Wikipedia. Well, everyone, we'd love to hear what we missed. Are you sitting there listening to us screaming, holy fuck, how did you forget about this? Well, we want to know what we forgot. So please go to Twitter, Too Much CGI. You can yell at us on Twitter, or you can go to toomuchcgi.com and send us an email. Tell us who we missed. I can't think of anybody else than Scott. Can you?
No.
So I'm going to say I officially think we got them all.
I'm not bold enough to say that, but we got all the ones that mattered to me.
That was fun. Man, you did shake the dust off this old brain.
You too, man. I didn't know some of those. The Rubik's Cube? Who the fuck greenlit that?
Yeah, well, somebody who's clearly not in the cartoon business anymore.
Right. Deke.
How about we talk about the news, Scott?
Before we do, why wasn't there a Nuki cartoon? I think it really would have given that whole franchise legs. We could have got more Nuki.
What would the drawing of Nuki have been? It would have just been somebody's like scribble, like it just scribble a fucking piece of shit on a screen and be like, that's Nuki.
No. You know what they should have done? It wouldn't have been animated at all. It would have been stop motion animation like the California Raisins.
There's another one we didn't talk about. Wasn't there a California Raisins cartoon?
I remember there was like a Christmas special and they had like specials, but I don't remember there being like a standalone cartoon for the California Raisins.
Well, if we keep this going, I'm just going to start making up cartoons.
But Nuki should have been a stop motion animation, California Raisin. He looked like a California Raisin a little bit. This little piece of shit. It really would have given that whole thing a lot more meaning, and Nuki would have been known in this present day.
Oh, here's what I missed. Do you remember the Deep Throat cartoon? We all missed the Deep Throat cartoon.
All right, let's do some news.
Are you a Saturday Night Live guy?
I am. I don't stay up on Saturday nights to watch it. I'm usually doing something else. Usually sleeping. I'm not that exciting. But I do watch it the next day or the next day after on YouTube.
Oh, on YouTube. I watch it on Peacock. I watch the whole show, and it's like, there's people that say, oh, the show's jumped the shark. It's over. It's done. I still watch it. I still get a kick out of it. It's not always great.
There were some fun ones. Do you watch it every week?
Pretty much, yeah. I don't think I've missed one in years.
I do too. I find the Please Don't Destroy videos that they put out are probably my favorite part of every week with the three writers.
Yeah.
Those guys' skits are fantastic.
The production is really good. So let me read this from Variety. Saturday Night Live post-production editors to strike April 1st. So they're saying that this is the first time that anybody's actually striked and potentially held up this show. But they're talking about it being the post-production editors. And I'm wondering, like, is that the people that make, what you were talking about? What is a post-production editor?
For a live TV show? That's weird.
Yeah, that they must be the people that are making anything that isn't live.
Shorts. Yeah.
Right? What else could it be?
I don't know.
Barring an agreement with producer NBC Universal, the 12 to 20 editing crew members have announced that they intend to halt work and disrupt the show should bargaining sessions in their bid for pay inequities and health benefits continue to stall. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? Like, I'm going on strike tomorrow. Well, I'm going to make sure that Saturday Night Live never airs until they pay me right. What power?
It really is, because you figure all their guest hosts and their music guests and everything else they have, that's all locked in.
Members of the SNL editing team are paid rates far below industry standards, while colleagues working other jobs on the show receive pay appropriate to their crafts. Yeah, that's kind of shitty.
I'll say.
So it sounds like they should maybe make that a little bit, more fair. But when you're dealing with unions, I don't know enough about like what's really going on. Is Lorne Michaels really in control at this point? Who knows?
He's still a figurehead, if nothing else.
Like, can he snap his fingers and say, hey, give these guys a better wage? Or is he just so, far removed from that?
Apparently, he still has a lot to do with the hiring and firing of comedians that are on, like, of cast members.
I don't know if you noticed the other one of the past episodes, but the good nights at the end of the show, they all come out and they say good night. Well, Amy and I were watching, and somebody opened a shirt, to reveal a shirt underneath that said contract now. And we went, what the fuck is that? So it turns out that's what
There
they're
you
talking
have it.
about. Yeah, they're talking about this. So the cast who was out there saying goodnight, they were supporting the editors by wearing that shirt, I guess, and putting it on national TV.
It's funny. By watching it on YouTube, I never see that ending, farewell, waving, thanking, happy horse shit. I only I just watch the skits and sometimes the musical guest, depending upon who it is, but I never see that end part.
It's awkward. They all just got a hug and just, hey, good job. Oh, I used to hear that if somebody's pissed off that they didn't get their, skits on air that week, they usually wouldn't go out and do the good nights because they were so annoyed because it's such a cutthroat.
Really?
Yeah, it's such a cutthroat job.
It is.
So if you ever don't see somebody doing the good nights, they probably are pissed off that day.
Yeah, I hear it's really competitive to go into the pitch meeting and try and get your stuff on air. So I can see there being bad blood and animosity there.
You a big Dilbert fan?
Never cared for Dilbert. Even working in the office world, I never thought he was funny. I'm more of a Far Side guy myself.
Did you hear about the latest Dilbert news?
How everybody's dumping it because of racist rants, I believe.
Yeah. So Scott Adams, the writer of Dilbert, shot his mouth off, said something that a lot of people find distasteful, and now other people are going, "Why are you just finding out that Scott Adams is a creep? Like this guy should have been kicked out of the industry a long time ago."
Really?
So yeah, there's a big pile on the Scott Adams guy. But I heard he just found a new home for Dilbert, and like I literally heard this on the radio coming home today, so I don't know how true this is. But I heard he found a new home and he's like a little bit edgier. Like he's the real Scott Adams now coming through Dilbert. And, he made some racist comments. So I'm not really looking forward to racist Dilbert. Like, what the fuck's going to happen to Dilbert? That'd be so weird.
Dilbert's just going to spend the rest of his working life in HR.
Saturday Night Live did a great skit of Dilbert on the. Did you see that one?
Dilbert sat in on the Weekend Update.
Yeah. And they're like, what's that on your head anyway? Is it hair? No, it's flesh.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't. I never thought it was a great comic. I don't. Maybe I wasn't target audience, but it never did anything for me.
Here's another story from Yahoo. We've been talking a lot about the DCU lately and how we're confused. Well, it's becoming clearer as time goes, but we were mostly confused on what they were going to do with the movies that are coming out now. How they're going to, direct the DCU in the future. And I don't know if you heard this, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen the latest Shazam 2 trailer, but there's a cameo in it from another DC person who, in my mind, they're trying to not let these DC people get any more airtime, like Superman, like that guy, I can't remember his name. Like they're like,
Henry Cavill.
Don't want to be putting these guys on because we're trying to reboot. But sure enough, Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, makes an appearance in Shazam 2.
Oh, I didn't see this.
And they gave it away in the trailer. So a new TV spot for the upcoming Shazam sequel, Fury of the Gods, surprised fans by spoiling the appearance of a major DC Universe superhero that's set to make a cameo in the film. The latest ad for the sequel was captured by fans online and saw none other than Gal Gadot or Gadot. Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman appear in the commercials. In her brief appearance, she can be seen jokingly telling Shazam to stick to saving the world after he makes a gesture for her to call him.
Oh.
Dumb joke.
That is a dumb joke.
So, I mean, how does that fit in?
I don't know. Well, Henry Cavill made a appearance as Superman in Black Adam right before they canned his ass. So this may mean nothing.
Oh, it might mean Gal's getting fired tomorrow.
I thought you were going someplace else with this. I saw a leak of Lady Gaga on the set of the second Joker. And they're saying that that's in production and she's out in LA. And somebody snapped a pic of her as Harley Quinn. Still in street clothes, maybe in transition from psychiatrist to supervillain. But yeah, that's in production out there. So I thought you were going someplace different with the DC news here.
I didn't see that one yet. Does it look cool? Does she look cool?
It was just like a still photo, so it's tough to tell anything. But the fact that Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga are in this, I think it's much more appealing to me. I'm much more looking forward to that than I am Shazam 2.
Yeah, you mentioned I was just up in New York. I was near those stairs, that the famous stairs at the Joker.
Yeah.
There are a lot of, And you had also mentioned that I was near the Ghostbusters. I think it's called Ladder 8 or something like that.
Ladder
the
8
actual name.
Firehouse.
Yeah. Well, that's weird being next to it because I was like, holy shit, this is it. This is it. And it's so small and it's in a weird part of town. It's right. It's like, this isn't where I expected it was.
Right.
I don't know. It just, the whole thing didn't seem real. It's hard to believe that I was actually here looking at this thing and it was so small. It looked like a fake firehouse made up to be like a Ghostbusters kind of tribute. But I was like, that was really it.
Is it still a working firehouse?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. I remember they used to have Ladder 8 in there, and it actually had the Ghostbusters logo on the side of the fire truck, which I always thought was really cool.
Yeah, it was weird being there.
Yeah, it's movie magic for you.
Yeah, so it's literally right next to Tribeca. It's right next to Tribeca Park. So you don't really think it's in Tribeca. Tribeca is a really cool kind of. It doesn't look like the rest of New York. It's got a lot more color and the design is different. It's not that normal grid thing that I expect. When I think about New York. So it's just it just didn't seem like it was in the right spot. But sure shit, there it is. That's it. That's the one. And it just looks so different than I remember seeing it on screen all those years. It's always strange when you go to see a place. Like I went to the Nightmare on Elm Street place. I went and saw the Freddy Krueger house. Like somebody fucking lives in there. They must have been so annoyed that I pulled up, stopped, took pictures and all. But when you see it in person, you're not impressed. You're like, this is just a regular dull house. How the fuck did they film a movie here and make it look like it's such an important big house? It's a nothing little house in a nothing little neighborhood in LA.
And it was practical effects and movie magic. And as they say, never meet your heroes.
Yeah. Never meet your heroes, even when they're a house.
Even when they're buildings.
Worldofreal.com says Alien Romulus starts production in Hungary. We're getting another Alien movie, Scott. Do you care?
Who's asking for it? Not me.
So that's the question. Who's asking for these? Who's like, oh my God, I can't wait for another Alien. Here's my money.
I feel like my approach towards Alien movies right now is, I hope they undo what the last one did and make this one good.
Well, the one thing that I do like about it, so they got this guy, his name is, oh God, I can't say this name. I don't even know it. Fede, Fede, Fede Alvarez. And he's been in Hollywood for a little bit. He's made some really good movies in the past. So he made, I didn't love that Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, but it was actually kind of interesting. He made that new Evil Dead movie.
Okay.
That was really good. The Girl in the Spider's Web I'm looking at, Don't Breathe 2. Those I don't know. But a couple of them that I've seen, he's a good director. So it's a new take to give somebody like him Aliens because he's going to put style into it.
Right.
And Aliens has always had that specific style it's had. So I don't know. Maybe they'll do something different. Maybe we'll like it. Or it'll be another goddamn Predator where they tried something different. It still didn't work and it just burns out the entire property altogether. But is there any life left in this Aliens property anyway?
I don't know. That's the big question. I feel like they're squeezing this fruit as hard as they can to get the last of the juice out of it, but it's gone sour.
The Alien saga, which began in 1979 with Ridley Scott's film and Sigourney Weaver in the lead, has had many sequels over the years. Alvarez, best known for Don't Breathe and the Evil Dead remake, will try to follow in the footsteps of Ridley Scott, James Cameron, David Fincher, and Jean-Pierre Jeunet. David Fincher did the third one. You know who he is?
No.
He did like Fight Club.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yes.
Yeah, all those movies. What's the one with the head in the box? What's in the box? Seven, yeah. Yeah, he's a great director, but he really fucked up that third Aliens movie. That is a terrible movie. I don't think he talks about it anymore. He made that Facebook movie. Yeah, he makes a lot of good stuff, David Fincher.
I like The Social Network. That was a good movie.
Somehow it was good. Not accurate at all.
No, I don't know the story of Facebook, but...
Well, the story of Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg's a real creep. He's a real asshole. Not a nice guy.
That kind of came across in the movie.
And they kind of painted him to be a nice guy in that movie.
I didn't think so. I think he fucked over the Zuckerberg. Not Zuckerberg. He fucked over the Winklevoss twin. Or the Winklevoss twins. He took their money, said he was going to do something, and then did something completely different. Dicked them over. Dicked over his partner, too.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to rewatch it. That sounds like the reputation he has. I've always heard things because I work, in tech, and And I've heard stories like he'll take people up to this certain spot in the woods and he'll be like, guess what? You're selling me your company, whether you like it or not. Like shit like that.
Oh.
Like, you motherfucker.
Yeah. That's kind of the dickish stance that I got from him from that movie.
All right, well, here's my last item from JoeBlow.com. Escape from New York. Radio Silence describes their new film as a requel. So we were talking about this movie not too long ago. And I think I'd said I heard they're making a remake, but then I haven't heard anything about it in a while. What the fuck is a requel?
I have no idea. A reboot and a sequel at the same time?
So I'll read this little passage from Joe Blow. In last year's Scream movie, which came to us from the filmmaking trio known as Radio Silence, there's a moment where the characters realize the latest iteration of the Ghostface Killer is making a requel. It breaks down like this. You can't just reboot a franchise from scratch anymore, but you can't just do a straight sequel either. You've got to build something new. It's got to be part of an ongoing storyline. New main characters, yes, but supported by and related to legacy characters. Not quite a reboot, not quite a sequel. It's a requel. Some prefer the term legacy-quel.
That's terrible.
Over requel? Yeah, we don't need any more new words.
So it sounds like it takes place in the exact same universe. The characters from the other movies still exist. They're not recasting anybody. They're just in a different part of that world doing the same shit as the people from the originals.
I guess.
Is that what you get from it?
I read it to you and I still don't know what the fuck I read.
That was my interpretation of what you gave me.
When asked by comicbook.com if the movie will be a requel that will allow Escape from New York and Escape from LA star Kurt Russell to return, the director said, "It's a great question. I don't think we know enough about the movie yet to be able to say anything, but yes, requel is the idea. There's no way to remake how great that movie is. Would be a fool's errand to try. So, we'll try to borrow what we love from it and find a new way to put the package together." All right. That's a new thing. A requel.
So they're just going to glom onto it and tack on their shit and hope it brings money.
Yeah, I love that he said there's no way we can remake this. I mean, it's too great. We shouldn't even try. I'm into that.
Then don't.
I'd be way more interested to see, as things happen in I don't want to see a million Ghostbusters sequels related to the characters I care about, but I could watch other stories in that universe. That's fine. That doesn't shit upon the original stuff that I love in case they make a bad sequel like they did with all those Star Wars, in my opinion.
Well, I was just going to say, I thought that's what they were going to do with Star Wars. I mean, it's a vast galaxy. Why in the shit do we keep tying everything back together? You can tell a story that doesn't have to tie in. You can still keep those same original characters in the lore of the world you're in. You don't have to tie back to be this person's son or that person's granddaughter. That's the way I thought the Star Wars was going to go. We can still live in that world and play in that toy box, but everything doesn't have to fucking connect. But going back to the beating to death fan service that Hollywood's giving us now, that's what they always fall back on.
You heard him, Hollywood. This guy's got the answer. You got to shake your shit up. Stop doing the stupid shit you're doing.
How about an original story? How about an original story is all I'm asking for.
That's too risky.
Yeah, I guess.
And that's unfortunate because you know what? There's nothing wrong with new stories. Nothing wrong with new movies.
Speaking of Star Wars, I think I forwarded you over a news article earlier this week. Did you see at South by Southwest, Disney, I believe it's Disney Parks and Entertainment, debuted a real-life working, retractable, and extending lightsaber?
Yeah, I saw that. You said, I'm going to get one for my kids.
I said, I'm going to get one. For the kids, of course.
For the kids.
Not for me.
So how does it work? Did you get a good look at it? Like, how does it retract? It's clearly not light only, right? It's probably a plastic piece.
Oh, no, it's a plastic tube. I think it works just like how the other ones have worked before, where if you flick your wrist, it flies out. But this is all, you hit a button and a motor inside the hilt actually extends two plastic pieces that light up as it extends. It looked really legit. And we don't know if the one that the guy on stage had was an actual production or just a working prototype. It still is yet to be seen. But if what he had in his hand is anything close to what we can get in real life, I'd be all for that.
Yeah, I think somebody did make a lightsaber. I'm pretty sure I saw it on YouTube.
Yeah, that was actually like a plasma beam that could cut through steel. That is a thing out there on YouTube, and it looked really impressive. Basically, he had a device in the hilt that emits hydrogen and oxygen, and it lights on fire. He could cut through steel with it. He said sometimes, though, the emitter can, blow up in your hand because of hydrogen blowback. So I don't think that's coming to toy stores or collectors' stands anytime soon.
I want to give it to the military.
That would be fantastic. Jedi military?
Fuck collectors. I want to see soldiers running with lightsabers. I want to change the battlefield. I want to stop, doing this archaic war shit. I want to go to war with cutting edge shit like lightsabers.
Lightsabers were a time from long ago, a simpler, more elegant weapon from a time long ago.
A gentleman's weapon.
Not as clunky as a blaster.
That's right. I knew you were quoting the movie. I just couldn't get the line.
I don't think I nailed it 100%, but you got the idea.
It's there in spirit. All right. Well, this was another good episode. This was a fun one.
This was a fun one. I like these walks down memory lane. I think we should do some more of this because if nothing else, it's entertaining for us. And you know what? We don't know what you want to hear, but if you let us know, we'd be happy to put that out too. So for now, we're just going to do what we're having fun with. And this is pretty goddamn fun to me.
Yeah, we hope you like it. And we think you do because the download numbers seem to suggest you do. Yeah. So we will keep on doing our part. You keep on doing yours. And we will all see each other right here in about a week.